Hey, my name's James, and in this video, I'm going to show you how to use your iPad on stage to wirelessly control your tuning software on a computer that's at front of house. If you've ever wanted to have vocal tuning going, but you don't want to add another thing to your SoundText to-do list, or you might be changing keys spontaneously and you don't want to have to communicate back to front of house that you're changing keys, this app is going to let you change keys with wireless MIDI over the network seamlessly and easily, and the program is not that expensive. Before you get started with this part, I'm going to assume that you've set up Live Professor 2 to run vocal tuning on your vocal channels. If you want to see a video about how I set it up with vocal tuning to and from the console and getting started with snapshots, I'll put a link to that video down in the description. So let me show you how it works, and then we'll erase it all and start it all over again to set it up. So check it out. Over here on the computer, you can see I've got Waves Tune Real Time on a bunch of different vocal channels. So you can see I've got all these global snapshots, so I can recall different keys. So I've got these first four set up. And over here on the iPad, I can hit the button here to recall that scene and all these other scenes. So you can see that with the iPad remotely and wirelessly, this is just power and I'm not connected wired, I can get my different keys set up and good to go. Additionally, we can set up different scenes for different particular songs and tempos. So let's say that we wanted to have our delay plugin follow this as well. We can go to a certain tempo and a certain key at the same time. So really handy what you can do with these global snapshots. If you're running just vocal tuning on Live Professor, or if you're running it as an effects unit as well, you can time those effects and get different effect settings going if you really want to nerd out and have things, really precise. So we'll show you how to do both of those right here. So we're going to start over on a new session, and we're going to delete all these. So I'm going to just make a new project. Go ahead and save the changes. To start on Live Professor, we're going to name our chain vocal. We're going to have them in and out mono, and I'm going to add 4 chains, right? Because 4 would be a big pain to change all of them at once. We're just going to do all of that. And we're going to use virtual inputs right now because my Presonus Studio Live is not connecting to my Mac properly at the moment. I think it's an operating system error. I've filled out a ticket, so I'll get it going. Let's start it at 19 and return it at 19. So as if we're going in and out of the same channel with the card input. So mono, number of chains to add, there we go. So now we're going to select Waves Tune Real Time and do that, and go ahead and close it. Well, I'm going to set up some of the settings right now. In that, I'm going to change it to the major scale because I'm going to have to do that on everybody. And I like to turn on vibrato. And if I wanted to change any speed things, I'd do it now. But the standard speed is going to be just fine for you. So now I'm going to close this and duplicate it. And duplicate it again. And duplicate it again. And that should be enough. So now I can just drag these into their respective places. And that was a little easier than doing it 4 different times. Now I can start creating global snapshots. But another cool thing about Waves Tune Real Time is I'm going to start with A major, and everybody's in A major already. So I'm going to go ahead and create a global snapshot with this little plus. I'm going to say A major. Now, really fun thing, I'm going to go to B flat next. So I'm going to hit B and then flat, and then this button Send to All will send it to all the other plugins. So now as I'm looking on this is already on B flat. I don't have to go through and change all of those manually. It saves me a lot of time. Now I can create a new global snapshot, call it B flat. I can take off the flat and Send to All and call it B major. We're going to go to C now, Send to All, create a new one, C major. So we've created these 4 snapshots that we can use for recalling the key on all of these. Now for some reason that went to D instead of A major, so maybe I didn't hit Send to All. That says D, that says D. Oh well, so if we need to update a snapshot because we made a mistake, so we can go to A, send to all, and then this button here will update the selected snapshot. Click this, and now everybody should be in A major. Test it out, and it's working. So happy times. We've set up all of our snapshots so that we can change the key. Now, I would go through and do all the rest of the 12 keys, but that would get a little bit tedious, although not as tedious as it used to be. So yay for that. Now what we're gonna do is connect our computer and our iPad to the same wireless network. Right now we're on the same Wi-Fi network because I'm at home. If you were doing this at church, I would recommend you having a separate Wi-Fi router for your iPad to connect to on stage that connects just to the computer. It doesn't necessarily have to have internet, but it needs to be on the same network in order for the Mac and the iPad to connect to each other. So we're gonna go to the audio MIDI setup. Usually when you see audio MIDI setup, it's gonna come to this screen here. Close this. So this is what it's gonna show you. You don't see the MIDI setup, you just see the audio setup. So if you go to Window and Show MIDI Studio, now you can see the MIDI devices that are connected. If we click on this network driver, you could do it over Bluetooth as well, but network is going to give you a little bit better possibility of a connection since Bluetooth has range restrictions. This is what it's going to look like after it's set up, but let's clear it all out so that it's as if you've done nothing. Now, on the iPad, I've already set it up where I've launched MIDI pad. So I'll show you how to do that and get that set up, but all I've done is launch MIDI pad. And now it's going to show up as a session or as a potential connection point there because it's going ahead and running the MIDI in the background. I'm going to create a new session with this plus button. I'm going to enable it. Then I'm going to select my iPad and hit connect. So after I've connected here, it's going to show up over here. And now I'm getting MIDI connection over the Wi-Fi. So we're connected to the iPad and everything's good there. Now as I go back to Live Professor, we can start adding commands. Now, when we're ready to do this, we'll check that out. But first, let's take a little bit closer look at the iPad. Here on MIDI pad, we're going to go to tap to switch pages, and I'm gonna create a new page, and I'm gonna just delete this one, and we're gonna go from scratch. So we're gonna create a new page, and we're gonna call it Live Professor, and go here. Already it's in its matrix mode, or it's already created 24 of the pads, and it says it's in editing mode. So when I tap one of these pads, I don't know why it says edit mode when I haven't hit edit, but we're gonna change the number of rows and columns. If you just wanna do tuning keys, you can do 12 of them. That would be 3 by 4. And we can do it this way. Now, for each pad, we can name it, and give it a color. On pad 2, we're going to name it, and we're going to give it a different color. On pad 3, we're going to name it and give it a different color. And on pad 4, we're going to name it and give it a different color. Forgot to do the color on that one. So we've got our 4 pads that we've set up. Now on the type trigger pad, we're going to call it a pad because we don't need to toggle anything. And what I like to do, because it's simple, is go over to program change. So we're going to stay on channel 1, and we're going to go to, for A major, we're going to go to program 1. So A major, channel 1, program 1. Happy times. On B major, which again, we're going to change this because autocorrect doesn't like it. Now we're going to go to our MIDI command and change it to a program change, and we're going to call this program 2. Now the precise channel that you're actually using matters very little. You don't have to program it on the computer side. I just like to do this in order so that I don't accidentally program the same command to do different buttons. So whatever you choose to do here matters only a little bit, as long as you keep it in order, and the fewer number of variables that you have, the easier it's going to be to keep track of it. So now we're going to go to B major, change this program to 3, and this is a little bit tricky to get just right, and then C major, we're going to have that program number 4. Now you could have this add other actions as well if you wanted to do multiple things like we were doing with the song, but for right now, we're just going to have this program change hit it. Now that we're done with this, we can click done, and over here on Live Professor, we can click this little MIDI icon, and that's going to help us learn what command we want for this global snapshot. So while I'm hitting learn, it's listening, I hit A major, and hopefully it works. But right now, it is not. We can undo it and try it again. This is what frustrates me. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes when it's working, you'll see a little bit of a latency indicator here that it's receiving signals. I don't know why it's not. Try anyone, see if this works. See, it says connected. You can disconnect it and connect it again. Try list learning, and it's still not doing its job. Not getting MIDI commands for some reason. Maybe after I delete and make a new session, I've got to restart. I'm going to restart. So after a quick reboot, let's try this again. So we're in MIDI network setup again, and we're going to create a new session, check the checkbox, click the iPad and hit connect, and it says that it's connected. I'm looking for MIDI data coming over here. I'm not seeing it on the MIDI network setup, but let's see if anything is working over in Live Professor. Over in Live Professor, if I hit learn, MIDI trigger, still not working. And this is frustrating because sometimes it works, other times it doesn't. Let's go to options, audio MIDI options. MIDI devices, IAC driver, bus 1. Let's say network session 1 for the hardware device. Let's try it. Over here, let's try network session 1 for our routing. See if that works. Learn, and it did it. Okay, so there was a step that I missed. So now go to this one, learn it, B flat, cool. Now we can go to this one, learn it, B major, awesome. Go to this one, learn it, C major. So we're gonna remove all these and show it in order. One other thing that you have to set up before Live Professor will receive MIDI from your iPad is to go over here to Options and then Audio MIDI Options, or Command M. And then we're going to go to MIDI Devices and add one more MIDI device. We're going to choose our Network Session 1 as our new input device. We could rename this. We don't really have to. Just hit OK. And now, over on Audio MIDI Setup, we're going to also make sure that our live routings have Network Session 1 in the send and receive positions. So going back to Live Professor 2, we select our global snapshot and hit the MIDI button. We're going to learn this trigger, and then we tap the iPad to learn program number 1. This says program change 0. MIDI will sometimes say 0 instead of 1, depending on how they number it. So don't get thrown off by that and you're like, hey, I set that as program 1. Sometimes they just shift over 1 and you just have to let your OCD go a little bit. So we're going to continue with learning a trigger for B flat major. Tap the button on B flat major, and it's there, program change 1. Click out of there, hit the MIDI button, learn B major, and now C major. Cool, so now when we hit these buttons on the iPad, the corresponding global scene changes. Let's verify that it worked. Looking at all of these, and let's set them up so we can see all of them at once. They're not in order, but that's okay. And I hit A, everybody goes to A, B flat, B, and C. Repeat this process for all your other keys, and you can set up your iPad to run the tuning key from on stage. Now there could be the situation where you need to bypass the tuning, so let's make sure that we set up a button for that as well. Now as our safety, Live Professor has a bypassed button, which means that the audio will be routed straight from the input right to the output again. So if any of your plugins fail, if anything goes funky or haywire, this little setting will make it so that all of your plugins get bypassed. So we're going to hit this bypass all on all of these, and now we're going to make a new global snapshot called bypass. This way, when we select this, all of these channels are going to bypass whatever plugins we have here. Doesn't matter what they are or what key they're in. It's going to be our safety in case somebody goes to a different key, or the key that we thought it was is not the key that we're actually singing in, or if somebody is being made worse by the tuning rather than better, we can just get rid of that altogether. So again, I would create another button on here and edit, let's say pad 21. We're going to go over here, call it bypass, And let's make it red to make it stand out. And we're going to make it program change number 13. There we go. All right. So program number 13, we're going to hit done here. And then on our learn, we're going to hit that, bypass, and now program change is there as the trigger. So we can choose that one, we can choose these, and everything is working perfectly. So we've set up our tuning keys. What if we want to set up our effects to follow the song? So we have our particular song that's at a particular tempo, and we want our delay and reverb times to match that particular song, and we want it to happen automatically. How would we do that? Well, the key here is to have different filters on the global scenes so that we're ignoring some of plugin parameters and we're accepting some other ones. So for most of them, if we have the key established and we are doing the song in this key and we are doing it in this timing, then we're going to have that as one snapshot for all the plugins. But if we want to do just the plugins for our effects, we can filter those as well, and let me show you how. So let's create some new plugin chains for our effects processors. And we're going to call this one reverb first. We're going to make it stereo, or our input mono and our output stereo, because that's the way that our aux-ins and aux returns are set up. And we're going to go ahead and add two, selecting it as 31 and 31 here. And then we'll reconfigure there if we need to. We'll just rename it later. So we're going to hit OK on here. We're going to call this reverb, and we're going to call this one delay. On here, the reverb, our channel 31 is our input. Channel 31 and 32 are going to be our output. Here, channel 33 is going to be our input. And then 33 and 34 will be our other outputs. So we can route those on the console, and I'll make another video about how to do that. Now that we've got our reverb and delay routed back and forth, we can add a new plugin, and let's go to our H delay for fun. H delay mono to stereo. There we go. And now we're going to have our delay plugin be, oops, I did that the wrong one, and I might be creating a feedback loop. So let's turn that off because of the way that I have the output of the computer running through some of these channels. That could be creating a problem. So we're going to take this over to our delay, and we're going to do H verb and mono to stereo. Now this one is going to be being fussy because of the routing. So we're going to switch the routing around a little bit and change it up so we don't cause these problems. So we've got that figured out, and routing can be a big pain if you don't do it right. So we've got these routed. We can see both of these if we want to change our settings. I have not figured out, or maybe there's an incompatibility or a setting somewhere where the host BPM on here has not followed for me on these Waves plugins. It might be that Live Professor isn't supported, but we can work around that. So if I go to my project tempo and I say it's 70, that actually changed this time. So that's a fun deal. So we could do it so that the project tempo changes. And when we create a new snapshot, let's call this House of the Lord. And we created that snapshot. We can filter which parameters are recalled by this snapshot. So we can see here our vocal plugins can be in or out. Say if we don't want to have those dependent on this, if we're just wanting to recall the reverb and delay settings, we can do that. We could have the tempo and sync as one of these. So maybe this is set there and these are kind of bypassed so that these just follow that. So we can set this with our recalled and not recalled to make those different presets, and maybe just the tempo and sync is really what we want it to do, so that when our project tempo changes, then our tempo or on the BPM here changes. But if we want the reverb to follow this, this doesn't follow mapped except for the pre-delay being synced. Right, so we can sync our pre-delay to the tempo of the song, and that would shift. So if we look at that expanded, and then we change our tempo back to 120, you can see the pre-delay shifted because it's synced there, but our reverb time did not. So we're going to click here and make sure that our reverb and delay plugins and chains all together are enabled or for the recall of that global snapshot filter. And then we're going to get here to update it. So if I remember right, 84 BPM, and let's do our quick math on what it is that needs to be for our reverb time. So if we're wanting to do a whole note reverb, remember that's 240 divided by the tempo. Pull up my handy dandy calculator that my math teacher said I would not have in my pocket all the time. So 240 divided by 84 is what we're going to have today. And that's 2.8 seconds. We're going to change our reverb time to 2.8, 2.85 if we want to be really specific, although no one really cares. And we're going to update that snapshot. If I want to change this to just a straight eighth note, we can make it a ping pong for this one. And now we can update that snapshot when we go there. So let's create a new snapshot for a different song. And we'll do good. Maybe that's 75, 70. We'll just go 70 because a lot of songs are 70. We're going to switch our reverb time, pick up our calculator again. So 240 divided by 70 is 3.4 seconds. So now we can change that and update this. And maybe we don't want it to be a ping pong delay on this one. We want it to be just a straight eighth note delay. And then we can do that. So we can set our filters if we want this to sound a specific way for this particular song. Recall that or update that snapshot. Now when we're switching back and forth, all of our delay times and reverb times are switching based on the song. Now we also could, if we wanted to, link this to the key as well. So if we wanted to rename this, you hit rename snapshot. And if we wanted this to be an A, we can do that and also change our filters so that Waves Tune Real Time recalls those, but we're going to have to recall this one first. Now, when I recalled this one, we can see that our plugin times here changed. So there was no data in Snapshot, so a lot of times it will go back to the default setting. So if we want to take this, we want to not include those in the global snapshot data for these. So when they recall, we're not messing with our effects times as well. So those are things that you need to look out for when you're making this. So we're gonna now recall this one. So we've got our data back for those. We're gonna pop this open, hit A and send to all, and now update that one. Now when we recall House of the Lord, it's gonna recall all of it all together. Now we also need to create the MIDI send information over here at the iPad. So we're gonna edit this over here and we're gonna add another row at the bottom. Now we can change these and rename it. If we hit the right button, it helps. Give it a color, change our program change. We're gonna go to program 14, if it'll grab. Let's go to 20, because 20 is fun. So now we've got that for there, and then the other one we're going to name good. And we're gonna make it program change 21. Hit done on here. Now we're gonna learn them over here with our little MIDI button. And that's not working again. If you run into this, you might want to verify network session 1, all this is working. I'm not in the right mode yet. So I've tried doing it while I was still in edit mode. On MIDI pad, make sure that you hit done before you try sending the command. There we go. We learned that MIDI command. We can click off of there. Now we can learn that MIDI command, and now we're good to go. So both of those are changing. One pro tip on the H delay, it's emulating an actual analog delay. So when you change the tempo, there will be some pitch shift in the delays that are changing right then. So it might be best practice to pull that fader down while you're switching that and then switch it over so that you don't get some errant, weird artifacts that are going there. So that's how you set up MIDI to connect from your iPad to your computer to run different changes for the tuning software inside of Live Professor. If you liked this tutorial, go ahead and mash thumbs up and hit subscribe to see more stuff like this. I've got more videos about Live Professor and the ways that I've set it up on the PreSonus Studio Live and on the X32. So if you want to see those, I'll put links down in the description below. And remember, it's all about the low end. Avoid the sound tech solo, and nobody leaves church humming the kick drum. We'll see you back here next time on Attaway Audio.